the scene of Sunday's crash near to Addis Ababa as the reason for this. Well, the crash was the second in just 5 months involving the jetliner. Grieving families may have to wait another 5 days before they can collect the remains of those killed in the tragedy. Relatives have been paying tribute to the victims at the crash site. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoy now reports.
A family torn by grief, seeking any information they can to help understand how they can receive the remains of their loved ones.
We just came here. We have been assisted by both the government here and we're waiting for the embassies to come here.
Their relatives had both British and Kenyan citizenship.
British consul is coming at 3 o'clock, and already the Kenyan embassy is also here, and
at this point, however, Ethiopian Airlines is not giving any promises as to if and when they will receive the remains. In an attempt to salvage any little customer confidence it can, the chief executive officer of the airline has been visiting different terminals at the airport to personally offer assurance of safety to other travelers using the airline. Experts say this is an isolated case, and although it may scare away passengers from the airline for a while, the 73-year-old airline still commands the largest fleet and more routes than any other airline in the continent.
You know, it will take sometime like 3 months, 4 months to come up with the preliminary report.
In total, 157 people died in the crash, including crew members. Memorial services are being planned by different denominations in the city to console the families of the people who were lost. Coletta Wanjoy, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
To South Africa now, and continuing with the story, the country's Civil Aviation Authority there has indicated that it will continue to lend support to the Ethiopian Airlines Authority. Well, this follows the Boeing 737 MAX 8 crash in Addis Ababa on Sunday. The Aviation Authority is currently hosting a 3-day conference in Johannesburg on improving aviation safety, security and growth. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
The 3-day conference offers the aviation industry here an opportunity to share ideas and possible solutions, to be proactive instead of reactive with incidences, accidents and threats. The annual gathering comes just a few days after the Ethiopian Airlines crash.
This unfortunate incident comes less than a month after the Travel24.com had published an article that indicated that there had been 0 airline jet hull losses or fatalities in Africa for the 3rd consecutive year. An incident-free airspace over the African continent, as alluded in the article, will only become a permanent reality when we get into the habit of engaging each other as regulators, manufacturers, and operators in an honest and robust manner about what could sometimes be uncomfortable topics. The bedrock of a sustainable air transport system that is much needed in our continent resides in high levels of aviation safety and security.
The Ethiopian Airlines accident prompted Comair Limited, a South Africa-based airline, to ground its Boeing 737 MAX aircraft.
It is not because Comair is indicating that there were safety concerns concerning the aircraft first, but of course they've taken a precautionary measures to say, and of course there's been a public outcry, you know, to say if the similar type of an aircraft has been involved in an accident in less than 6 months, could we not, you know, look at other means so that we don't find ourselves in the similar situation. At this point in time, we don't have an airliner who's using that aircraft, but of course there are expressions of interest which we are going to evaluate on a case-by-case basis.
South African aviation and tourism officials continue to emphasize that they will support the Ethiopian airlines and will base future decisions on the investigation's outcomes.
We will support them as we should. And I think that until the outcome comes out, it is important that we look and wait for the outcomes. And then we can base things on decisions on that. But the reality is we must support and collaborate. And we've been very, very good as a continent with aviation, and we've been growing.
By the time it concludes on Friday, the conference is set to ensure that the aviation industry shares valuable insights and then, armed with new information and strategies, translate those into meaningful actions. Yurisan Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
After a 2-month campaign against militants in Libya's south, the National Army says it now controls most of its borders. It's now targeting the capital, Tripoli, where Islamist groups have expanded their reach. Here's Nabil Elden with more.
In 2017, the Libyan National Army declared that they intend to march towards Tripoli, attempting to unite the divided nation. This week, the military forces backed by Libya's eastern government controls at least 80% of the 1.9 million square kilometers country. LNA now stands few hundred kilometers away from the rival Western government in the Libyan capital.
I believe the solution in Libya is going to be primarily a military solution. When the fight for Benghazi began, some 370 soldiers were fighting against 15,000 terrorists. The people fought with them, and that was the foundation of the Libyan National Army. So it has a strong popular backing, even in many of the places which are still far from the LNA's control.
LNA's recent campaign to control the south and the southwestern borders appeared to take place with little resistance. Before entering any city, the army's leader Khalifa Haftar rallies for domestic support first, which has so far proven to be effective.
We are already hearing factions inside Tripoli declaring support for the LNA. The key to entering Tripoli is going to be El Zawiya city. If El Zawiya joins the LNA's territories within the coming days or weeks, Tripoli won't stand in the way for very long.
Haftar's progress on the ground has definitely empowered the Eastern Bloc political weight. It didn't, however, stop them from engaging in dialogues with the Western Bloc.
After 8 years in conflict, many Libyans are tired of the division and instability. That is maybe one of the reasons why the LNA is gradually becoming more popular. Despite its political differences with the Western Bloc, it is gradually becoming a pragmatic way out of this division. Still, it has many armed rivals in Tripoli who see its return as a restoration of Qaddafi's regime. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, for more on this, we are now joined by Dr. Nabil Elden, and he is an independent researcher and author of International Politics. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Elden. The analyst in that story says, that was Ahmed Amir, says that he believes the solution in Libya is going to be primarily a military solution. Do you share that view?
I don't, first of all, thanks for having me. And I don't believe that the future in Libya will be engineered by military factor. The situation in Libya is so complicated internally, regionally, and internationally. So, though we consider very much the military advancements of Commando Haftar, General Haftar in the south to Marzouk area, but I don't believe very much that the future of Libya will be defined by military factor.
Okay, so not just military, as you say, it's a complex situation. With this push by Khalifa Haftar and the SIRT forces, also said to be mobilizing to help expel ISIL, What options would you say there are for the UN-backed administration? And at this point, is there hope that the two rival sides can actually unify?
Let me say that the show of joint leadership is just not more than a show. The UN-backed government of Fayez Sarraj still enjoys the international recognition. General Haftar in the east is controlling the source of wealth, oil. His military advancement towards the south to Marzouk area, 900 kilometers south of Benghazi, will really capitalize in his economical control of Libyan's oil. But still, there is other regional and international power centers who will define who is the main player in Libya. Last week in United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, Prime Minister Sarraj and General Haftar have agreed on a political agreement or something like, they have agreed on holding elections. Now, how can Libya get to that point? It's not easy. So they could say, okay, we agreed on election, but to get a peaceful democratic process in Libya, you need to control the weapons. Libya is awash by weapons, and those militias who are capitalizing on their influence. Stability in Libya is very necessary for the stability of that region. So, Italy, France, US, EU, even China, they should come together and bang heads in Libya if they really want to get and restore stability in Libya.
Okay, thank you very much for your analysis. That was Dr. Nabil Elden there in Cairo. Moving on to other news now. According to the United Nations, tribal massacres in the Western Democratic Republic of Congo involving horrific attacks on women and children last December may amount to crimes against humanity. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has more.
A United Nations probe in the Yumbi territory of Maindombe province found evidence of extended attacks. There were reports that 890 people had been killed and thousands displaced. This was a result of clashes between the Banunu and Batende communities. Similar attacks were also reported in the neighboring Lukolela territory.
We've been able to verify fully that at least 535 men, women, and children were killed, and 111 others were injured in Yumbi town, Bongende village, and Nkolo 2 village.
Authorities said it was not possible to confirm the number of persons still missing. An estimated 19,000 people were displaced by the violence.
These figures are most likely an underestimate. The number of casualties is believed to be much higher, as the bodies of some who died are believed to have been thrown into the Congo River.
The violence was triggered by a dispute over the burial of a Banunu chief, reportedly on Batende land.
The attacks, which were initially triggered by a dispute over the burial of a Banunu customary chief, followed strikingly similar patterns and were characterized by their extreme violence and speed, leaving little time for people to escape.
The attacks may consequently amount to crimes against humanity. No concrete proof was found to link the intercommunal attacks and elections that are due to take place at the end of this month.
So there are going to be elections held in this territory on the 31st of March. But of course, these people who've been displaced and who've had to flee across the border to the Republic of Congo will probably not be able to vote because of fears, ongoing fears of violence, and really the impossibility for them to get back to their homes.
The United Nations has reiterated the importance of holding the perpetrators responsible for their actions. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
We're going to a short break. Don't go away, lots more to come, including Number of people killed in Malawi floods climbs to 56 as cyclone approaches. And members of the British Parliament to vote on whether to ask the EU for an extension to the March the 29th Brexit deadline.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The number of people killed in floods in southern Malawi has risen to 56, according to Malawi's Department of Disaster Management. At least 83,000 others have been displaced since storms began more than a week ago. The country remains on high alert for an approaching tropical cyclone.
It's been more than a week of heavy floods in Malawi after rivers broke their banks in the southern village of Makina. Villages have been submerged in water, with most experiencing power loss.
Before my house collapsed, cracks appeared in the walls, and soon after the house came down. We all ran outside and watched as it fell. We were lucky to have got out with only minor injuries, but many other people were killed and some were badly injured. Many more have not been seen since the floods came. We hear crocodiles have eaten some people. I have lost all my belongings.
Humanitarian authorities are appealing for help to assist the displaced households meet basic needs.
Since we arrived here at the camp, we have only received maize flour and beans, which we shared among ourselves. But the supplies are not enough. We still need more because we are many and the food is in short supply.
We are receiving more women and children. Most of them are malnourished and they need urgent medical attention. Sadly, we do not have enough supplies. We are asking the government to move in first with medical supplies to assist the sick and the malnourished. Some of these children have malaria, but we cannot treat them because we do not have the drugs. Others have diarrhea and we need oral rehydration and zinc.
Malawi has been put on alert for more flooding, with tropical cyclone expected in the neighboring Mozambique. The Southern African nation has declared a state of disaster following the floods.
Actually, the general situation has been very pathetic, looking at the magnitude of disaster that hit the district, because it has actually displaced about 12,432 households, which is translating to about 52,511 in terms of population. So as you can look at the number of people who have been internally displaced, that's so huge.
Assessments on damage caused by the floods are underway. For now, Malawians living in the southern region of the country brace for more stormy weather.
Chomwono, CGTN.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, about 260,000 children are suffering from severe malnutrition in the Kasai region. This is according to the United Nations Children's Fund. As a result of insecurity, communities have continued to face displacement that leaves them in dire need of food.
Susan, together with her daughter Rosette, escaped conflict in Congo's Kasai region. They found shelter in Kikwit in the country's southwest. Like thousands of other displaced civilians, Susan struggled to find food for her daughter.
My daughter is malnourished and I have no money to feed her. She started to eat sand because she was so hungry. Now her belly is swollen. I can't get my daughter medication and have no way of treating her.
Insecurity means families cannot farm crops or earn money to buy food. Children are most often left to suffer from severe malnutrition. Congolese refugees who return from Angola are also putting pressure on basic services in Kasai. Baleke Mado brought her 4-year-old son to a clinic in the region for treatment. They too were displaced after fighting broke out.
They heard about the care offered at this hospital, and so his mother did not want to wait. She came immediately with her child, and after the clinical examinations, the child was declared malnourished.
When we left the bush, it was because of the hunger and the suffering. When we found a village to rest in, I was told about this hospital where children could receive medical care and food for free.
Conflict in Kasai was one of a series of deadly flare-ups to hit the country. Michael Karanja, CGTN.
Now to the island nation of Madagascar, which has been battling to contain an outbreak of measles. The disease began 5 months ago and has killed at least 1,000 people. Children have been the most affected. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has the story.
Robertson Soa has had to walk for 5 hours to get to this health center. She carried her sick daughter on her back the whole way. The child has spots that have spread throughout her body. Madagascar has been battling to contain the outbreak of measles. The disease, which started in October, has killed at least 1,000 children and young adults. Children are more likely to contract measles if they suffer from poor nutrition.
It's a sign of malnutrition. 6.3 kilos at 2 years old. That's the weight you expect of a 3 or 4 month old child.
Robertson is a farm worker. She can't afford a wide variety of food for her daughter.
We eat rice always with the same broth. We give her food because she often asks for it, but it's always the same broth with rice because we don't have enough money.
Health facilities are far for those who live in the rural parts of the country. Some patients have to cross dangerous waters in search of health care.
Sometimes we can't cross the river because there are crocodiles and the water level rises.
Access is not the only issue. Health professionals have to overcome entrenched traditional beliefs.
You know zebu excrement? If you boil it and drink it, it can cure measles. So I don't think it is measles. If she had measles, the bark of the laza tree can also cure it.
The World Health Organization is leading a huge emergency vaccine program. The emergency response has vaccinated 2.2 million of the 26 million population so far.
We find it unacceptable that children are dying of measles. It's not normal. We have a vaccine.
Measles is a highly contagious viral disease that can cause complications, including blindness and brain swelling. The outbreak in Madagascar has already infected over 80,000 people. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Members of the British Parliament will vote later in the day on whether to ask the EU for an extension to the March the 29th Brexit deadline. On Wednesday, MPs voted down a no-deal Brexit in an intense week of parliamentary ballots. Any request for a delay would still have to go before EU leaders next week, who have said that they will not allow a delay unless Britain makes concrete proposals to break the crisis. Well, Brexit has become deadlocked in the British Parliament, reflecting deep divisions in the country, exposed by the 2016 referendum to leave the European Union. Well, two of Britain's national newspapers have highlighted the pressure mounting on Theresa May. The Sun newspaper declares May's premiership to now be in a state of purgatory. The article says there could be a huge delay in Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. And the front page of The Times proclaims Brexit meltdown, but it claims May's negotiated deal with the EU could take place. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has repeatedly said that extending Article 50 would invalidate Brexit. Article 50 is a clause in the European Union's Lisbon Treaty that says that the UK invoked in 2017 to mark the start of its formal separation from the EU. Well, the deadline is now just over 2 weeks away. Chuck Tinter tells us more.
Theresa May has been working to avoid a hard Brexit. She's gone back and forth, dealing with two sides to ensure the UK leaves the EU with a favourable deal. But after getting rejected twice by Parliament this year, she may have no other choice but to extend Article 50 as the March 29 deadline looms. Prolonging this clause could buy the Prime Minister more time in finalising an orderly Brexit. To do this, she must submit a formal request to the EU, which all remaining leaders must unanimously approve. It may sound like an easy feat, but in reality, would be a tedious endeavour. Brussels has a timetable to follow before considering another Brexit deadline. The European Parliament is set to hold elections in May. New members will take their seats in July, and in the autumn of 2019, appointment hearings will begin for the new European Commission. With how much there's left to accomplish, there's no telling how long an Article 50 extension can last. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reportedly said a Brexit delay until June will most likely get a green light from Brussels. Chuck Tinte, CGTN.
We're going to a short break now. We've got all the business news coming up, including Kenya and France signed deals worth over $2 billion as President Emmanuel Macron concludes his East Africa tour. And Egypt on course to construct over 40,000 housing units in its new administrative capital by mid-next year.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
France and Kenya have signed infrastructure contracts worth over $2 billion. The contracts were signed as French President Emmanuel Macron visited Kenya to boost trade in the East Africa region. CGTN's Robert Nagila reports now on the French President's visit.
The French president jetted into Kenya on Wednesday afternoon for the third and final leg of his Africa tour after visits to Djibouti and Ethiopia. Emmanuel Macron's visit to Kenya is the first ever by a French president, an indication of just how important France values its relationship with Kenya. On the agenda, trade, investments and climate change. France says it wants to maintain its status in Kenya as a long-term and credible economic partner.
Mr. President, your visit signals our shared commitment to foster our bilateral relations and engagements within the region in various ways which will deepen, expand, and strengthen our bonds of friendship and cooperation for the mutual benefit of our peoples.
France was part of your strategy in terms of energy, water, and different topics. But now what we want to do, especially with the delegation of companies, we are with our delegation, what we want to do is to be part of your new growth agenda.
The growth agenda Macron is referring to, known as Agenda 4, provides opportunities for investment in the manufacturing sector, affordable housing, universal healthcare, and food security. As part of that pledge, the two leaders witnessed the unveiling of Peugeot's 308 model, the Allure, which will now be assembled in Kenya. Two further models will follow suit later this year. Regional security was also discussed, with Macron promising closer cooperation.
We are deeply committed in working together with Kenya on different topics. First, security, counter-terrorism, and obviously the regional agenda. We discussed at length about the situation in the region. We work very well together on the situation, but we want to improve the cooperation.
France has also agreed to finance and build a light rail system connecting Nairobi's main airport and the city centre. On Thursday, the French president will attend the United Nations General Assembly on Environment before meeting business leaders. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Egypt's Minister of Housing, Essam Al-Ghazar, has announced that the ministry aims to complete the construction of over 40,000 housing units in the new administrative capital by the end of June 2020. The project covers an area of about 1,000 acres divided into 9 neighbourhoods, including villas and various service buildings. Yasser Hakim visited the site and filed this report.
The new capital is situated 90 kilometers east of Cairo. The location is making use of the vast uninhabited areas away from the densely populated Nile Bank cities. The whole project is 190,000 acres. The first phase under construction covers 40,000 acres at a cost of over $20 billion.
We are here at the residential area being constructed by the Ministry of Housing, which includes 700 buildings with more than 40,000 units inside. It should be ready by June 2020.
Engineer Mohammed Abdel Maqsood is in charge of overseeing the development work in the city.
The new capital is a smart city with the latest high-tech facilities. It also solves the housing problems in the highly condensed and congested Cairo. There are 9 districts, 3 of them so far are fully constructed by the Ministry of Housing. In the first neighborhood, we are constructing 700 buildings, 952 villas, and 2,000 mixed-use units, to total 24,000 units. The second neighborhood is called Garden City, inspired by architecture in Paris, and will include another 24,000 units. The third is the business district.
What are the details about linking the new capital to other cities and the transportation for the residents of the new capital?
There will be 3 high-quality forms of transportation. First is the electric train that will begin from the metro station in Cairo through the cities of Shuruk, Obul, and 10th of Ramadan to reach the new capital. The second is the monorail, which links Cairo with the new capital from the east. And the third is the high-speed train that will link the new capital all the way from the Mediterranean in the north to the west of Cairo at 6th October City and Shokna in the east, an impressive route.
It's a huge investment. Where will the funding come from?
This was an empty land in the desert. Once we built the basic infrastructure, there was a rush from investors and real estate developers to book pieces of land here. The areas for private sector in the first phase have been completely sold out, and its price has shot up. The revenue from these sales cover the expenses of the projects, so there is no burden at all on the state budget.
The government headquarters, ministry buildings, presidential palace, parliament, and many embassies will begin moving into the new capital in the second half of 2020. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Tunisia is open to more Chinese investment. Its investment minister says the country is keen to host a research centre set up by the Chinese telecoms equipment manufacturer Huawei. CGTN's Adnan Chawashi reports.
Tunisian Investment and Development Minister says his recent visit to China was successful on all levels. Ziad Laderi met with the Chinese Minister of Transportation, the Vice Commerce Minister, and many Chinese officials and bankers.
I have discussed with our Chinese friends ways of boosting investments in Tunisia in many sectors like industry, railways, transportation, energy and banking. The Chinese way of doing business is very efficient. It is within the spirit of the Belt and Road Initiative. Chinese enterprises, banks and investment companies offer the best services at the best price and respect deadlines. China is a distinguished partner for Tunisia and Africa.
Laderi has proposed the establishment of a Huawei Research and Development Center in Tunisia while visiting the tech giant's R&D center in Beijing.
I have learned about Huawei's activity, its technological and research potential, and the programs it presents to develop the ICT sector, as well as its role in offering technological solutions in several countries, including Tunisia. Huawei is leading company in technology and development. Tunisia will increase cooperation with Huawei.
The Tunisian delegation, led by the Minister of Investment, met with the members of Tianjin City Chamber of Commerce, along with representatives of Chinese companies that are keen to invest in Tunisia in several fields, including textiles, food and energy industries. Tunisian professionals have welcomed the cooperation projects with China.
Tunisia aims to increase foreign investment and to boost export. It's a win-win partnership. Tunisia can become a platform for the export of Chinese products in several fields. We have the skills. We can develop the infrastructure with our partners.
Tunisian authorities have formally invited Vice President of Huawei to attend the Tunisia Investment Forum TIF 2019 to be organized by the Foreign Investment Promotion Agency, FIPA, in June 2019.
Tunisia is encouraging Chinese companies to invest in the North African state. According to the Minister of Investment and Development, the government will offer support and privileges to Chinese enterprises to ensure the success of their investments. Adnan Chawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
In South Africa, achievements of China's just concluded 2 sessions meetings held in Beijing continue to attract interest. Patrick Nawa, CEO of South Africa's Tezilanga, says his 13 years of experience has enabled him to apply what he's learned from China to start up his business. He attributes the success of China's One Belt, One Road initiative to the cooperation with entities to promote green development and eco-friendly construction.
Working in China and being able to speak Mandarin, that has really, helped me to be able to be one of the bridges between Africa and China. And you can see even from, the project that we are going to do here, it's a huge, huge project. It's going to create well over 1,000 jobs. Will produce 50 megawatts worth of power that will feed into the grid, which will go a long way in alleviating South Africa's, inadequate energy supply. So you can see that there are a lot of ways that China has come in, to help, African countries, to become self-sustaining, and I am really glad that, I am one of the people from Africa, who studied in China, lived in China, worked in China, and have now come back now to strengthen this relationship between China and African countries.
We're going to a short break. When we come back, ostrich farmers struggle to feed their livestock as drought hits South Africa.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In drought-hit South Africa, ostrich farmers are struggling to feed their birds. In Uthun, the local authority has warned that water will run out in 2 months' time if the area doesn't get any rainfall. It's bad news for the ostrich farmers that have already halved the amount of livestock on their farms due to the ongoing drought. CGTN's Michael Karanja reports.
South Africa's ostriches are trying to stay cool amid drought and high temperatures. Oudtshoorn in Western Cape's Klein Karoo boasts one of the world's largest ostrich populations. With not a single cloud in the sky, ostrich farmers are worried.
To be an ostrich farmer today it's a big challenge. It's low profit margins. We are facing the worst, or we're dealing with the worst drought, as I said, in 300 years. So there's no food, there's no water. The two big dams, Stomdrift and Kamanasi, is like 3%, 4% of water. So some of our fields we irrigated in November 2017. It's a long time ago.
The birds are not suffering, but the farmers who raise them are. Klein Karoo, one of the major ostrich production areas in South Africa, is in a desert area.
Farmers haven't been able to produce feed or fodder for the ostriches. So our challenge now is that it's expensive to buy in feed from outlying areas, from the irrigation schemes up north, and to feed the ostriches.
The area was recently placed under level 4 water restrictions, limiting monthly household usage. The Oudtshoorn municipality believes that if there's no rainfall, it will only have enough water to last until May this year.
I'm farming 27 years now, and we never experienced what's happening now. I mean, we were all full of belief that we're going to have lovely rain in November, December, January as well. We still have about a month left for thunderstorms. Then we start entering more the winter, the cooler season, which is not known for thunderstorms. And we need basically a big flood now, you know, to fill the dams, to fill the rivers, and to get our fields irrigated, that we can farm under normal conditions again.
The municipality has started drilling boreholes in Oudtshoorn, but farmers are still uneasy. A significant portion of their farming water comes from rivers and irrigation dams. Michael Karanja, CGTN.
All the sport coming up after the break, including... We tell you about the mixed martial artists making major waves in professional boxing.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout,